So I just finished part 2 of The Way of Kings, and it is chunky. I'm already 530 pages in, and not only is Brandon Sanderson, not only are these books bigger than the Mistborn trilogy, for example, those books were a bit slimmer, and also these books are kind of like a similar size to The Wheel of Time, but I feel like these videos are getting longer and longer for this series because Brandon Sanderson is so efficient. He does so much foreshadowing and is so efficient with how many clues he seems to put in and spicy bits of information that could lead to something and might not. Whereas The Wheel of Time was more like a slower progression. Although it had so much in it, it wasn't so obvious with its foreshadowing, I feel like. So that's why these videos are getting longer and longer and longer, because there's so much to talk about. So we'll start with the main plot, and I must say, Elhokhar dying would put this story into overdrive. The tension between the High Princes would come to a head, and if Elhokhar were to die, whether that be assassination or natural causes or falling off his horse because he believes that his underbelly thing was cut. I don't believe it was cut, by the way. I think he genuinely is being paranoid, but we shall see. But yeah, a few things could happen. We could get a bloody coup. We could get essentially just like a civil war and the Alethi alliance kind of breaks down. Or we could get a succession war, which again could be very bloody and hard fought. So I don't know if the story needs it. I don't particularly want it to happen right now. I'm quite enjoying the politicking and the positioning and the more Dalinar trying to figure out like what he needs to do and what direction he needs to go and meeting the characters. I don't want Elhokhar to die soon, but I do think he doesn't make it out at the end of this book. So what do we need? Right now we need a greater threat, and it would appear that the Parshendi would be that threat, and they have been for the last like 6 years or so. So we really need Dalinar's, gathering of everyone together. That seems to be his plan, is to put everybody on one page and to go out there and properly attack the Parshendi and make a difference in this war, either win or lose this war. So I would be more of a fan of that happening rather than Elhokhar dying and us being plunged into essentially a civil war between the Alethi. And we discover a lot about their alleged enemy, the Parshendi. The 3 big things that we learn are they sing while they're fighting, they don't like their dead being moved, and they seem to fight in pairs. And this would all allude to a kind of dancing culture in the Parshendi. In pairs, singing, like that would seem like it's a dance partner while you're in battle. The singing always goes with dancing, and then maybe when your dance is done and you die, your body shouldn't move anymore because your dance is done. That's basically the only parallels or only things that I could extrapolate from the information that was given. So I don't know how accurate it is, but when there is a strange race that are all efficient at fighting, in any fantasy story, they always seem to have a real strong cultural ideals that they stick and cling to that seem illogical, yet make them really good at their fighting and make them passionate people. And the example for that would be the Aiel in The Wheel of Time, and I'm sure there's others for different stories, but that's the one that springs to mind. So maybe my dancing theory is correct. Also, they grow their own armor, which is very crustacean. And I'm going to talk about crustaceans because there's a big crustacean theme, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We also get the first sight of a Parshendi shard bearer, and I think he has the shard plate on as well, or she. I have no idea how they organize themselves. I don't know who's the head of the Parshendi. I don't know how becoming a shard bearer either changes their social rank or their social rank changes whether they're a shard bearer or not. I'm not certain, but it's exciting to see one that isn't a Alethi. However, the most important thing that I think we see in this section is Dalinar recalling when he first met the Parshendi and those initial ones. And they were really curious about a couple of things right from the off. Apparently they have a penchant for languages, and they were also immediately interested in maps. What are they looking for? Why haven't they found it yet? Would it be a map of the Shattered Plains? And I'm going to get into that a little bit later as well. But more importantly, the only other mention of maps we've had is from Shalorn's father. I don't know if they would correlate, but he was quite obsessed with maps as well. And if I know Sanderson, there must be some kind of link. So maps are important. People are looking for something, and the Alethi seem to be blind to it. So the Parshendi know something. Overall, I think that the secret lies in the Shattered Plains. We know that the Shattered Plains was either like a nation or a city previously. We don't really know what happened to it, as far as I know. Kaladin explores one of the chasms, and others have as well, and I feel like there's definitely secrets down there. And something that I think is important is the Crem. The Crem is kind of another thing, like the Spren, Crem, they kind of rhyme. Are they related? Maybe. This kind of glossed over. It comes, I believe, with the storms, and the water kind of turns into like a physical mud / rock. So I had an idea that maybe they aren't chasms. Maybe the tall parts are mountains, and the floor part that you explore when you go to the bottom of the chasm, maybe that is where the city used to be. And over time, the Crem created these large mountains. Doesn't really explain why the chasm fiends like to go down there, but maybe there's something down there, something powerful that needs to be found. I obviously don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but yes, the Shattered Plains, the physical area where they're at, is key and important. So let's talk about Kaladin, easily our best character. Well, my favorite character. So let's talk about Kaladin. I think the most important thing is Kaladin, Shardbearer. How do we make this happen? Has this already happened? So something we do know is he did already kill someone who had either a shard blade or plate or both in the flashback. So what happens with that? Did he just not get the chance to go and claim it? Does the shard blade and plate know that Kaladin is now the rightful owner, or is that just like an Alethi custom? Will at some point a Bright Lord rock up with this plate and armor, and it will turn out the plate and armor actually wants to be with Kaladin? Maybe he can draw the blade, he just doesn't know how. All interesting ideas, but for sure he must somehow get a hold of this. The only thing that stops me thinking that he's going to have a shard blade and plate is that he seems to be able to draw energy, kind of like Zeph was, if I'm not mistaken. And at the first explanation, Zeph was like, you kind of have to choose whether you're going to use that energy or you're going to use shard plate and blade. Or I don't know, maybe Kaladin figures out how to use both. I can't remember the exact reason why you shouldn't use both, but it was one dulls the other or something along those lines. It just wasn't efficient to use both at the same time. So maybe Kaladin figures out how to use both, or maybe he starts with one and then turns to the other. But for sure, he's going to get a shard blade and plate, right? Having a shard blade seems to be his calling or his glory. Those were interesting concepts. We didn't really explore them a lot, so I'm not going to jump into them, but I am keeping an eye out for calling and glories and why they're important, unless it's just an Alethi concept, but it felt like a bit more than that. So another way he may get a shard plate and sword. Dalinar is speaking to his son, and he has either just been digging the latrine or not digging the latrine, which is or maybe it was just before it or just after it, I mean to say. Awesome scene, by the way. And he goes off into a trance, and he thinks like, why did we not give shard plate, or why did they not leave tools for the common man to achieve his goals? And he's starting to become very hypothetical, very, very theoretical, and having these ideals. Dalinar is kind of trying to figure out like where he's going spiritually next, and he seems to be going to a place of service. So I still think Sadeas is not necessarily Sadeas. Dalinar is going to see Kaladin with his bridge crew, holding true to like the codes, so to speak, without even knowing them, and maybe he gifts him the shard plate and the blade. And I had an idea on when it would be most efficient for him to do that, if he did do it, that I'm going to talk about. I think it's like right at the end of my notes, so it's a bit of a wild idea, but anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But maybe Dalinar gifts plate and blade to our boy Kaladin. We get some other interesting developments. Rock can see Seal. Seal almost spills the beans. So she gets like a weird look in her eye and she says, what does she say? I don't think men were always like this. It's like she's some old being and she's gonna remember more and more and more and more. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on Seal. And we also get a hint as to where Kaladin's hatred of the Light Eyes, or Bright Lords in particular, comes from. And that is when here the City Lord, I think it's called, maybe City Ruler, dies and the new one comes, and immediately the new one takes a disliking to Cal's father and their family, and I would bet my bottom dollar on that Bright Lord being somewhat responsible for the death of Kaladin's family. So what next? I think Kaladin's path must cross with Sadeas and it must cross with Dalinar, but before that, or maybe during that, we do need to see the betrayal from Gaz. I don't think Gaz is done. Gaz will betray him. Maybe I'm overthinking this Gaz character. He might just be selfish and now cowed, but I just feel like he's going to backstab Kaladin in a way that's going to really set him back. Because things, although he's still in a terrible situation, they seem to be relatively plain sailing for him right now. So I predict a downturn. On to Dalinar, our crazy prince, and it's quite clear that what is happening to Dalinar was happening to Gavilar first. So is whatever is whispering to Dalinar was that whispering to Gavilar? Is that voice good? Is it bad? Is it neither? I have my suspicions. I have a suspicion that the codes were written by one of the shards or the shard's direct followers, and that's why it's so important. And I believe it is a shard that's speaking to Dalinar now and giving him the visions, trying to push things in the right direction. And initially I thought the shard was on the good side, trying to stop the Everstorm. But the advice to trust Sadeas, I don't trust Sadeas at all. Maybe I'm misguided there, but I'm not certain the shard is good anymore. But we'll see. I'm not saying it's definitely bad. It's definitely not like a ruined situation, I hope. But yeah, I'm less confident that the shard's pushing us in the direction that we need to be in, or that Dalinar needs to be in to stop the Everstorm and the other things that are obviously bad that's going to happen. And Dalinar gets an awesome vision. He gets like shadowy hounds. He gets what I would guess is the Radiant Knights coming down, men and women, using the power to heal, doing things that others with the shard plate and blade cannot do. He was quite hung up on the fact that their helmets would like appear and disappear, I think it was. That got mentioned a bunch of times. Don't know what the significance of that is. But yeah, I that's going to be important. I think being able to heal with the power. It seemed like they were utilizing like I don't really know what the power was called, like the storm power, the thing that Kaladin seems to be able to draw into himself. Using that whilst, I don't know if they were soulcasting, but she was using like a topaz thing to heal. That would be right up Kaladin's street if he could heal and be a warrior in the shard plate. Yeah, that would be cool. So that's another insight. I seem whatever information applies, I'm kind of applying it to Kaladin. I've chosen him as my champion because he is our obvious champion right now, and I am a big fan. Not that I haven't mentioned it 50 times, but big Kaladin fan right now. So whatever Gavilar was on the cusp of discovering, the codes, that bead thing he had, he just seemed like he was onto something. Dalinar is now in that direction. But we must address the tension in the room. Was he sleeping with his brother's wife? I think so. There's tension, and then there's the tension that those guys have, and you can cut it with a shard blade. I can't think of anything else that would have happened between them for it to be so awkward and strange and charged. Was that maybe where he was the night his brother died? Because I don't remember any mention of his brother's wife being there, and he was killed like basically outside of his bedchamber, if I'm not mistaken. So surely she should have been there. I don't know. Hopefully he didn't do that. He would go down in my estimations. So anyway, that massive elephant in the room aside, I think whatever Jasnah is looking into will coincide with Dalinar's enlightenment and revelation. I think those two are tied together. I'm going to keep an eye on that. Do I know what it is? No, not got a clue. But when it's discovered, I think they're both going to be, you know, on the same end of the stick. So what of the head notes? The head notes are throwing in all types of names, and I'm going to just have to read this off my notes. So, Race was holding the most frightening and terrifying shard. Terrible shard. Race visits Cell. Aona and Saki being splintered. Bavadin. I mean, that's just a lot of shards. I'm 99% certain it's Hoyd that's doing the narrating, because he mentions the 17th shard, and the 17th shard is definitely a name that a group of people that were following the shard's activities or trying to get a shard's power or just interested in it would call themselves, because the 16th shard, the 17th shard, all fits together. And I don't know if Hoyd's a shard or not. I'd have to guess yes at this point, but he also seems different to them. But they would obviously be very interested in Hoyd if they were trying to get to the bottom of the situation. But based on Mistborn, I you know, it's silly to just base it on one book. But what they had was two shards, kind of the opposites of each other, which would make sense because there needs to be a world that exists and you need two forces pushing against each other. I don't know what the shards are here. One of them seems to be Race, who seems to be terrible and destructive. I was thinking, you know, one of them has to definitely be sending the storms and the storm light and that kind of energy come from them. The other one would maybe be the Spren and the Crem. I don't know if the Crem and the Spren are even related. The Crem also seems to come from the storms, so maybe not. But the storms would like batter something down and wither it down and wash it away. And the Crem would build it back up again. And I put the Spren with the Crem, so I don't know where they fit and I don't know how they work, and it kind of rhymes. So boom, there you go, have that as a prediction. However, this story and world does seem a lot bigger than the Mistborn worlds. I think mainly I'm just being influenced by the size of the story. I don't know if it's going to span different worlds, but it just seems like there could be more than two shards on this planet / storyline. So what other extra things did I notice here? There were a few. First thing I thought of was, what would a Soulcaster battle look like? I think that would look extremely cool. It would just consist of people like making and unmaking things and trying to make and unmake each other, which would be very dope. Kaladin's father referred to the new City Lord as the Landed. Would that be like landed like an alien, or landed like what I assume that our Knights Radiance did in Dalinar's vision? Probably the second thing. And my final thing is, it's all very crustacean, is it not? We had the Voidbringers, we have the Chasms, which kind of seems like the sea floor. We also have the Parshendi, who are very crustacean as well. The Chull, I should say, seem very crustacean also. So where's all the water? It would feel like there should be more water, and maybe the Crem created like a huge dam. Like the water must have been there. There's too many crustacean-like things for it not to have been there, right? Are we gonna get, is the Everstorm actually just like a giant flood and we're gonna get a bit of a Noah's Ark situation? Maybe. The Parshendi are paired up, they fight in couples. Maybe that's so they can go 2 by 2 onto the Ark. Obviously, this is a silly idea, but everything does seem crustacean-like, so I'm predicting that there is a huge body of water somewhere that is being held back. Or maybe the body of water just turned into Crem. I don't know. There's so much that's happened. These, as I mentioned right at the start, they're so detailed, these books, and I have so much more to read. I'm afraid that these videos are going to get longer and longer until they're an hour each time. I might as well just read the book with you guys on the video, but I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, comment what you think of my predictions, and I don't know, anything else you think is relevant, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you so much.